This is from Fox News. Thousands protest Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence outside Dodger Stadium hours before start of Pride Night. And we can see someone super chatted us, Bill M, saying Dodger Stadium entrance shut down by protests. So for those not familiar, this is a hate group whose sole intention is to insult and mock Christians and Catholics in particular. And they are being given the opportunity to perform their hate speech at Dodger Stadium. Now, for me, I'm all about the First Amendment and stuff like that. So typically it's like, you know, if you're going to have a group and they want to speak their mind and they want to put on a show or whatever, I'm typically okay with it. However, in Los Angeles, they have very, very strict rules against this. So it's surprising that law enforcement allowed this hate speech to persist and forced the good citizens seeking social justice to come and protest.
I would also want to know why the hell so many things that have nothing to do with drag shows now have to do with drag shows. What does sports have to do with it?
Everything
like,
has
who the hell in the good name of middle management was like, you know what would be a good idea? We should have this group out. Like, what does that have to do with baseball?
It's giving straight girls who make pride about themselves. You know what I'm saying?
I feel like
drag has never been as popular until all of these people who had no interest in drag decided we needed drag shows everywhere.
But I want to pull up, I have this tweet from Savannah Hernandez. Thousands of Catholics have shut down the main entrance to Dodger Stadium on Vince Scully Avenue in protest of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence being honored tonight. They're now lining the sidewalks and have taken over the entire block. I mean, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about conservatives who need to stand up and protest. And I got to point out, too, I probably shouldn't even say conservative. Many of them probably are. Many of them may be Catholic, but Savannah says thousands of Catholics. Perhaps there are thousands of Catholics, but I'm willing to bet there are a lot of just regular Angelinos who are like, hey, we're not okay with this kind of performance, this minstrel show.
And not all Catholics are conservative, right? There are liberal Catholics who would see this as an insult to their faith. It's like we forget that there are pro-life Democrats. They're a minority, but their party gave them away. We don't talk about these things because we have decided that, you know, most are like this. But if you were a left-leaning, if you were a liberal Catholic, this would be just as insulting to your faith as if you were a conservative.
I do have a feeling that Seamus would tell you there aren't liberal Catholics.
There are. I know
there
them.
There definitely are.
But are they really Catholics then if they're upholding certain values?
I think there are a lot of Catholics who disagree about Vatican.
Can you be a pro-choice Catholic?
No.
I would say no, but I'm not a practicing Catholic. It's not my decision to
Well,
to
what I will say is
with.
there's certain things, and this kind of gives me hope a little bit. There's certain areas of weakness, like cracks in the structure of the left, where they lose their own party. And I think these are some of the ones. You see, like the trans issue, the vax issue. You know, when they get too extreme on certain issues that go against common sense.
Didn't Minnesota just legalize late term abortion? And that was just...
Yeah, I believe so.
That was just a couple of years ago. I was talking to someone, because like I said, I'm from Minnesota, and I was talking to someone and I was explaining about Ralph Northam and what was going on and all of these things. And they're like, that sounds crazy. That's not real. I'm like, no, you have to read this. You have to read the bill. You have to read through all these things. And then they're like, well, that's very fringe. It's not going to expand. That was a couple of years ago. And they're like, that will never come here. I'm like, that'll come here before it'll come a lot of other places, given the way that Minnesota has started to lean.
BLM activist who just got arrested in Canada or charged in Canada for an anti-Catholic hate crime. She blocked a Catholic school and people couldn't get in, I guess. And she was also a very serious pro-abortion activist. She led a huge rally in Calgary and was interviewed, and she was saying we need to speak out about the potential. This is after the Roe decision leaked, and she was saying we need to speak out because what's happening in America could spread to Canada. They could take away our rights to abortion. If they think it could happen, shouldn't we think it could happen, right?
Yeah. I thought the timing of the Roe v. Wade decision was a bad move for conservatives. I thought it really hurt. I had a big debate with my dad at the time. He's like, people don't care as much as you think. I'm like, people are single party voters and they vote emotionally. And, when what's his name from Barstool Sports came out and was like, I'm voting left if they go on
Portnoy?
this. Portnoy made some kind of speech about voting Democrat if this happens. And I was like, man, people are so weird in their decision to just like outrageously stick it.
No, that makes sense for Portnoy. I mean, his argument, and I'm saying this in all seriousness, I thought his argument was that if he knocks up a woman, he doesn't want to have the kid.
Oh, that's a fair argument. If that's his argument for being pro-choice.
I personally find it morally I find it to be morally repugnant.
Yeah, but at least he's consistent in his.
But I don't want to assign views to him. I don't know if that's 100% true. I just remember people saying something like I think he said something about that, like, yo, if you like up with a chick and she gets pregnant or whatever, like you got to have that choice or something like that.
That's what it's because of ease, a society of ease.
Let me just double check that. I want to make sure I'm right about that.
No, but that makes sense.
there's
I mean, that
plenty
really
of-
does make sense.
Yeah.
Plenty of
For him
men
to
who
say.
are like, yes, I am very in support of your abortion rights because I don't want to have to take any responsibility if
Yeah.
I screw up. Or
We always
you know.
say it's women, but I think there are a lot of men who are like, no, please,
Everything
go forward.
everything that women are pushing nowadays, men are secretly very like. Women are like, I want the right to be promiscuous.
It's like-
I want.
Doesn't Andrew Schultz do a whole bit about this?
Yeah.
Where he's like,
I'm
we
not
agree,
He's
feminists.
like, he goes, the feminists of today are the F boys of
Yeah.
5 years
Man,
ago.
guys
Yeah,
are like, what do
yeah.
you tell me? You don't want me to pay for you? You don't want to work?
Free the nipple. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, do
we
it.
want to pay for our own stuff.
So-
Dudes, get down here.
To clarify, I don't have anything of him saying anything like that. He's literally just giving the traditional left argument, women's choice, it's their right, Constitution, etc.
Oh, all right.
I mean,
Either way.
I'm sure there are other men who have made that argument. I sort of disagree. I think, obviously it was bizarre for the leak, but I think the timing of Roe v. Wade was good for the conservative base. I think conservatives felt like it was a win. Like, yes, maybe there were moderates who got freaked out by it and moved the other way, but you're always battling over
Maybe they
moderates.
could have gotten that
I
win
think-
after the midterms.
I think
that's what at the timing of it is the
no,
problem.
I think midterms are a debacle in a lot of ways, but I think generally seeing that the Supreme Court was going to change this decision was something that helped conservatives. I think they felt like it re-energized them because for so long, I think a lot of conservatives feel like they are battling an uphill. They are battling uphill to defend their values and keep them here. They're always having to compromise on everything, and it was the one time in a long time that they have been like, oh no, we were right. This was a bad idea. And the Supreme Court says it should go back to the stage, which was also the crazy thing because the left went into hysterics about this. And they were like, you're challenging abortion everywhere. And it's like, kind of, if your state wants to have it, you can. And if your
yeah,
state
but
doesn't,
it's the messaging, and the
But what do
right
you
never
mean?
gets an opportunity to put out the right message. You'll never get the media to back a message that's right. So, like, I've even made arguments to people who are very left leaning, and I've gotten them on board with it by just saying I don't think the government should have a say one way or the other, because they could eventually lead to a complete restriction on it if you feel like they should be.
which is what they tried to ask Trump about at the town hall. Like this is, they are only operating, they only want this to be a federal issue. The fact that this is the compromise, it's a state's issue, as it always should have been, is not enough.
I disagree. I don't think it should be a state issue.
Really?
Yeah, I think overturning Roe v. Wade is wrong. It should be a federal issue, and it should be federally regulated.
No, I feel like
You think it should be federally regulated? Too?
Yeah, I think I don't know exactly what my view was around the time this was overturned. I think we were all fairly in agreement over it. We've had a lot of conversations about it, and I think that it should be federally regulated under the 14th Amendment, or because of the 14th Amendment. I think the federal government has to ensure equal rights under the law to all life. That doesn't mean I think abortion should be banned. I don't. I think it just means that we can't have two standards of when someone is allowed to get an abortion because it terminates a life.
There is no point in history where an arbitrary definition of personhood has not resulted in the mass death of a group.
Right. And so, where we are is I'm traditionally, I'm in the more traditional pro-choice camp, which is up to a certain amount of weeks, government stays out of it. After a certain point, it's the baby can survive, the baby should not be killed. That's my view. I think the federal government should regulate it. Of course, Roe v. Wade's overturned, so it doesn't matter. But it could go to congressional legislation. If Trump and Republicans sweep, you could end up with like a 12-week nationwide ban if the federal government.
I just feel like we should always defer power to the states rather than the
too.
federal government. I agree with you. We want to have an equal application of equal protection under the law. And I personally believe life begins at conception, right? But I think putting power in the hands of the federal government is always a mistake.
But then you're saying that California has the right to restrict free speech.
How so?
This is a 14th Amendment question. Do we as human life, have equal rights under the law? The answer is yes, we do.
Well, the question then becomes, and you're making the argument, if by your own argument, then there should be a complete ban of abortion across the board from conception.
Nope. The issue is when it comes to two life forms inhabiting the same body, I don't believe the federal government has the right to order someone provide their body and blood to another person.
There you go. There's a competing rights issue with abortion.
Absolutely. So you have two bodies. However, how can we, acknowledging this, that there's competing rights, allow two different states to have two different standards for what the Constitution is supposed to enforce. So that means it's up to it's up to the federal government to interpret, or for legislation to codify, how the 14th Amendment should apply to unborn persons. The left's principal argument is life doesn't begin at conception. They have to make that argument. Otherwise, the 14th Amendment is clear. Abortion is completely illegal. Or I should say restricted up until like 12 to 16 weeks. I do not see how you could argue the Constitution guarantees the rights of all citizens, except we allow the states to determine when and where those rights start and stop. You can't.
Well, the problem is, again, with definitions of personhood. And again, I think any made-up definition of personhood, other than it is a human life, by your own definition, is a dangerous one, even in a competing rights issue, because you're comparing two different rights. You're not competing of the right to life of the mother to the right to life of the fetus. You're comparing the right to terminate because of dependency to the right to life. And so the right to terminate, or the right of dependency, is a much lesser right than your right to life. In other words, if I connected you to me right now and we had a accord by my own choice, by my own action, I forced your dependence onto me. And I said, now that you are dependent on me, I have the right to kill you. You would say, well, no, my right to life is bigger than your right, especially that it is through your own action to depend on me. Now you can make the argument in rape and incest in those cases. That doesn't hold.
I don't think the incest one applies.
Because there's no, as long as there is no consent to the act, that argument makes sense. But when you take action to create a life, and then you try and say, well, there's a competing rights issue. No, it's not an equal right. And you took action to create that right through consent, to create that situation through consent.
Early on, I was very much saying like, oh, it's good that the states are taking control of this issue. It should go to the states and things like that. Now, I very much don't think so because of the Constitution and because of the 14th Amendment.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.